How's it going, friends, and welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I paint faces and just using 3 different paints. I'll also touch on painting figures themselves as well, so grab yourself a brew and a bicky and let's just get straight into it. So we'll start with the eyes because I like to start getting these done out of the way first. Now I use a sort of off-white colour rather than a bright white because it's a little bit too much. And then we sort of tend to use a brown, make a kind of oval sort of slit in there, and then we can start basing the base colour skin. So the paints I'm using this are from Wall Paints, and the base colour I'm using here is Tiger Eye Skin. You can also see I've done a zenithal highlight here to also help with the highlights of the shadow and the skin. This does help, but I do lay this on a little bit thick, and I've done this a few times, so I kind of know the process that I want to be doing. Now, as you can see, I've blocked it all in, and those eyes look not too bad, I don't think. Eyes have always been one that's a little bit difficult to sort of work out. Anyway, so as we move on to the lighter skin tones, I will mix in a bit of barbarian flesh with the base colour and just sort of lighten it slightly, and I'll do this pretty much throughout the way, just adding slightly lighter colours of the previous one until we get to sort of like the main mid colour, which would be the barbarian flesh. So I'm going to take a quick minute to talk about paint brushes for this. Now, if you could get a good decent synthetic brush, these will do, but they just don't last as long. Now, I bought very specifically for this, you don't have to, but I bought some Charles Edwards Kolinsky sable brushes. These retail at around about £35. I'll leave a link in the description down below just in case, but what I would suggest is, which I was using prior, was a Migamo Kolinsky brush, a size 2, which retails at about £10. They are a bit expensive, but in all honesty, it has made a hell of a difference to the paint job, I feel, because I've usually used very basic synthetic brushes before, but these hold the tip, they hold a lot of paint better, but again, it's an expensive choice. I do appreciate, so it's entirely up to you, but if you get a good sort of size 2, I find size 2 in general is a good all-rounder, and I've used size 2 literally through the entirety of this paint process. But I'll leave links in the description down below for these brushes just in case you wish to purchase these types of brushes. So what I'll do is I'll work from the cheek outwards, highlighting the higher cheek down towards the sort of the cheek, main cheek area itself, the lower jaw area, the chin, and then I'll highlight the edge of the nose as well. What you can sort of see in what I'm doing is I'm not going right all the way down into the crease. So what we want is the darker skin layer to basically be our sort of shadow area there. I'll also do the top lip as well, and you can see around the nose area I'm only doing sort of like the high nostril area and the bridge, again leaving the deepest area with that base tone flesh. Then I'll work around the eyebrows, and again doing the sort of same. I'll pretty much highlight mostly the upper brow, sort of join where I did earlier with the lower half of the cheek. You can leave a little bit of a gap there, which give you a nice sort of like a little kind of like eye crease if you like, but then just sort of like says, just working across the forehead there as well. Now this is a little bit scratchy, again this is sort of, I've just tried it on with this one, sort of try and give him a couple of sort of like forehead creases as well. I do find painting figures and painting in general like this, it's one of those processes, it's a bit messy, and then at some point it just sort of falls together. I don't know if that's me, I don't know, but it just sort of seems to work for me that way. Now I've sped this up a little bit because we're doing literally the same sort of thing here. By this point I've added some quartz skin, which is the higher tone that I'm using for this for these paints. And this is literally just the 3 paints I'm using for this entire paint job. And all we're doing is pretty much the exact same thing as we was doing before, but again we're just sort of doing higher lights, so literally just the higher cheek, bridge of the nose, a little bit of the top lip and the chin, and a little bit down the cheeks. I've done less over the eyebrows, so you can see I've just sort of done kind of like a triangle sort of area around there. Now again, so this one's a little bit messy, this one is. Sometimes what you can do is put a little bit of a glaze of the sort of the mid-tone down a little bit, so that's just like a really watered down version. So for this one, it says we're using barbarian flesh, so I'd put a sort of a glaze over that, and that kind of ties it all in. Now, like I said, I do find figures, particularly skin, is quite a bit of a back and forward process. If you do cock it up, it's not a problem. Just basically go back over the previous layers, or if you want to, just sort of go back to the start, which I did originally for this video. Actually, this is the second version I had to do for this one, because the first one was absolutely awful. So we'll just go over a very quick recap. So after the base colour, all we are doing is effectively highlighting the higher areas. So like it says, cheeks, nose, upper lip and chin, and the forehead. Like I said before, building this up using less in those particular areas will give you the sort of creases and shadows that you would on a face. We'll also mention, don't have to use these exact colours. Now previously I was using AK's skin set, so anything along these sort of similar sort of skin tones, they will do for skin tones. So for this guy now, he needs a chin strap, and the easiest way of doing that is using masking tape. Now you don't really need one of these, but it does make it a little bit easier to cut straight lines. So I've got this display line cutter thing. It makes it a hell of a lot easier to do obviously sort of straight lines, but to be honest with you, a ruler will literally do. But this does give you, you know, a bit more direct cuts and sort of sizes, and make things kind of a little bit easier. But it's one of those things, is extravagant, not needed to buy kind of things. So anyways, you can see I've attached his chin strap to his helmet. I've just used a bit of super glue there to make the bond a lot better. So did the same for the rifle slings as well. Now this is where the zenithal highlighting comes into good use. Now if we thin our paints right down to this sort of glazing consistency, we can just build the layers up, very much like we did with the skin tones. Obviously all this is doing is show us where the highlight areas will be when you've got kind of like a sunlight. So when you're doing a zenithal highlight, make sure it's pointing the sort of direction that you'd think, you know, the sunlight will be hitting the model, which most likely will be on the sort of front side that you'd want it. And this is just working the layers up, and as we get further through the layers, we can then sort of start adding more in the higher areas. Again, very much the same as we did the skin tones, and building the highlighted areas up. Now again, what I like to do, and this is where the back and forth bit comes in again, is I like to put a wash over the figure. Now for this, I've used a sort of dark umber and black oil wash for this, but I usually used to use Tamiya Accent Panel Liner dark brown. That will do as well. A lot of the time you do kind of need to be careful of the colour that you are using as a base colour. So obviously, because this is mostly dark brown anyway, so a dark brown, or brown tones I should say, a dark brown wash will do quite well. And then what I will do is go over those highlighted areas again, and I just find that just sort of makes the figures and these sort of things pop out a little bit more. Like I said, for me it's a backwards forwards process, and it's the way I like to do figures, and I find it's a good result for me. I'm generally quite happy the way these particular figures have turned out. Actually some of the best ones I've done in quite a long time. But it's quite a bit of practice, you know. It can be a bit of backwards and forward process anyway, regardless with my extra sort of steps. But again, this is the way I like to do my figures. Now, as I said before, this is my process of doing figures. I'm not saying it's the right way, it's the way I've kind of learnt, seen from other people, and kind of like worked my own way out of doing figures. I tend to find that's the best way of learning, is trying to copy what somebody else is doing, which you guys are probably going to do with this video, and you'll work a way out that works best for you, and you know, whatever you find easiest. Figure painting is quite a learning curve, so try not to get too frustrated and try and enjoy the process. So there you go, friends, that's how I paint faces and figures. I hope that was of some use to you. It's something I'm still sort of picking up, but I was actually very pleased on actually how these figures worked out, hence really why I've done this video. I was going to try and do it anyway, obviously, because otherwise I wouldn't have recorded it. Anyway, so I do hope that was of some use to you guys, and hopefully it was a little bit helpful and give you just a few pointers and tips. In the past, I've used AK's skin tone set, and they've got a bit more variety in there. I mean, I've never really touched on the sort of shaded and shadow type colour paints in that, because they're geared to, well, I say geared to, they obviously focus a bit on a very stylised figure, which is something that I'm not too keen on. I mean, they can do it better than I can, so I can't really complain, but it's just not a style that I'm particularly into. These figures are part of a larger diorama, so keep an eye on that. It's something, a big project I've been working on in the background. It's taken me a bit to sort of work out and get my head around, but it's a pretty cool big sort of diorama. It's something a little bit different. It's something very different that's going to be on the channel as well, so keep an eye out for that. Now, I will suggest getting yourself a Kolinsky Sable brush. Not necessarily spending an absolute shed load on brushes. I mean, I did buy a set that were around about £30, but if you get at least a size 2 paintbrush and just fork out on that one, again, they are a bit pricey, so have a bit of a look around. I think the Migama one I got was £5 or £6. I mean, that is, to me, that is a stupid amount to spend on a brush, but using it, it does kind of make sense. It's not, I know it's not a cheap purchase, something that you know maybe want to think about. Generally, I have used cheap synthetic brushes and they have been fine. The only issue is they just don't last long enough. Kolinsky Sables, as long as you look after them and keep them clean, they are fantastic brushes to use. But that's me. I'm not saying that's where you have to, the route you have to go down, but since using them, I personally have found that my figure painting has gotten a lot better by the using them. So it's entirely up to you. It's your cash. You know, you spend what you can, how you can, and that sort of thing. Anyway, I do hope you have enjoyed the video. Hope it has helped a little bit. If you have, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. If you'd also like to help further and donate the channel, there are links in the description below. There's also channel memberships as well. It gives you early access, relatively up to date videos and vlogs. And on that note, I'd like to also thank channel members John H. Scar Modelling, Saki Mac, Darren Hall and Andy Littleford. Thank you guys ever so much for being channel members. It generally is appreciated, but whichever guys you'd like to support him, I'm more than appreciative of whichever that is. But anyway guys, thanks ever so much for watching. Again, hope you have enjoyed the finished photos of the figures.